But let me give you a tiny tidbit of bits and pieces that come from the Old Voice Network. There is an organization called the National Reconnaissance Office. You've probably heard of it.
Absolutely.
A very super secret group, and a super secret group among super secret groups. In the National Reconnaissance Office, about, I guess, 4 or 5 years now, they had for a number of years a series of satellites called the Keyhole System. You've heard of it?
Yes.
Keyhole. Oh, it was super secret and probably the very best satellite system in the world. Mm-hmm. Well, they probably made it even better now. They could supposedly read a postage stamp from space. Well, there were some intriguing questions being raised by a number of people about what was known as the Ararat anomaly. Are you familiar with the Ararat anomaly?
Mount Ararat, Noah's Ark.
Okay.
And so the guys in the NRO took their keyhole system and focused on the Ararat anomaly, which is, you know, a puzzle. Well, when the word got out, when the pictures finally were downloaded, and they computerized and enhanced them and cleaned them up, and they pushed them on the wall, or they broadcast them on the wall there at NRO, the remarks went something like this, and these are actual quotes. Jesus Christ, it's a goddamn boat. Christ, it's a big boat. Okay, one would say, why would something like that be so highly classified that it is way above top secret? Why would the discovery of a boat on Mount Ararat be classified so high, far above, you know, anything? Anyhow, the story comes out. The reason they classified it is because after they discovered that it was a goddamn boat, a big goddamn boat, they inserted a team of SEALs on the site. Now, that's a term that the military uses to put a bunch of guys on a scene.
Right.
Apparently they dropped them by aircraft, they parachuted down, a dozen of them or so. They inserted them onto the scene, and these guys spent several days in this goddamn boat. And then they extracted them by helicopters. And when they extracted them, the guys brought with them some anomalous artifacts, which have never been described or named. But those anomalous artifacts is what led to this whole thing being classified not only top secret, but way the hell above. And that's a little bit of information that's come out via the network of the Old Voice.
So are you saying this is Noah's Ark?
No one knows what it is. It was originally the Ararat anomaly. But then they discovered that it was a gigantic boat, apparently.
But a boat built by humans.
Well, it appears to be. Mm-hmm. It's essentially, from what they gathered, wood. Mm-hmm. But it's a work of genius, apparently. It was intricately put together, and it's really...
And it survived all these years.
Well, apparently. The question, how many years, you know? When was the flood? The last rumor I had was 12,000 years ago. 10,500 BC.
When are they saying? I mean, I'm sure you have a theory.
Well, the religious implications of it, you see. You know, every ancient culture on the planet has a similar tradition about a flood.
Right.
You know, they have classified Lake Vostok. They took it away from JPL, who was monitoring it, and, you know, with satellites and all. You're familiar with Lake Vostok in Antarctica?
No. Oh, no.
Oh, God, that's a sensitive story in itself. Under the ice in Antarctica, there is a freshwater lake deep, deep down under the ice that's 100 miles long, about 50 miles wide. Fresh water, The temperature in the damn lake is about 65 degrees, which is pleasant swimming, you might say. But at the end of Lake Vostok is what's known as a gigantic mascon, a mass concentration of metal, very similar to the mascons they discovered on the moon. Gigantic circular-shaped metallic objects deep under the ice at the end of Lake Vostok. Highly classified. JPL had it. National Security Agency took it away from JPL. It's one of the most... And not all of the Anunnaki are 9 feet tall. They were human enough that we are related to them and they're related to us. And that lovely little story in chapter 6 of Genesis is quite true. They did indeed engineer the genes and chromosomes of an existing species on this planet. God knows how long ago. Sitchin says it was 200,000 years. The information I have learned indicates that one of the major tweaking took place about 60,000 years ago. That Homo sapiens sapiens was tweaked and genetically manipulated even more. So we're coming along slowly.
Okay, so what 4 races? Let's name them, in your opinion.
Well, there are the humans.
Okay.
Some people call them the Nordics. Then you have guys that are very pale and very tall and very broad, which some people refer to as the big whites.
Okay.
And then you have the little guys.
The Greys, and then the Anunnaki. So those are the 4 you're familiar with.
And not all of the Greys are an evolved species. Some of them appear to be what they used to use. They were an artificial life form.
Androids.
Yeah, they were humanoid androids, but they were constructed. They're laboratory products. And they often wondered why, in cases of crashes, where there were survivors, that some of them didn't come back and try to retrieve. And the story that came out among the military for many years was that they wrote them off. They went back and made more. Now there are some people who say, well, they don't have a soul. Well, I run into human beings that I began to wonder whether they had a soul. But
okay,
there are 2 types of Greys from what I've learned. There are the little guys who would appear to be laboratory products. And then there are the 6-foot Greys, whose eyes are more round. And they're not really gray, they're just sort of a chalky off-white color. And they seem to be an evolved race all of their own. We have photographs, and many of them I'm going to share and show. I have slides, photographs of gigantic objects. I'm talking about humongous objects in space. And many of them are in satellites around their orbit around the planet. Many of them are in orbits around the moon, around Mars. I have a couple of pictures that I'm going to share that I got from a Soviet cosmonaut on what happened with the Phobos thing. The Russians, their famous Phobos rocket system that they sent up there some years back, which got knocked out of orbit by an anomalous object that came up from the surface. But it had taken a number of outstanding photographs before it was damaged and crashed.
Okay, what will you called it an anomalous, I don't know, object that came up from the surface, meaning the surface of the
Mars.
moon?
Mars.
From our Earth.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, the Phobos program was sent to Mars because they had hoped to land a lander on the satellite Phobos. There are 2 circling Mars, which are anomalous. Again, that fantastic word, anomalous. Astronomers consider them anomalous because, first of all, they're going in the wrong direction for a natural satellite, whatever that means. They're too small to be natural satellites, and they're too close to the surface of Mars to have survived. Because if they were natural, they would long ago have been brought down and sucked in by gravity and crashed. The fact that they're still there puzzles everybody. So the Russians said, we're going to land on Phobos. It's about 12 miles in diameter. I think Deimos is only about 6 or 7. And they were going to take some pictures on the surface. Well, apparently the intelligences up there decided, no, you're not going to do that, and bumped Phobos, the satellite that the Soviets sent up, knocked it out of orbit, and it crashed, apparently.
But they've been doing that to the JPL craft going up and around Mars
There
years now.
There is an intelligence on Mars that wants to limit our access to their reality. And they've done a damn pretty good job of it.
Well, our witness, Henry Deacon, and I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I'm familiar with him. I don't know him well.
Okay. He has said that the Anunnaki are on Mars in
They
bases.
are. I agree with that.
So are they the ones shooting down those objects, the various
probably.
craft from JPL and so on?
Look, Zechariah has said, and I know this old man, I respect him tremendously. He says they never left. They withdrew overtly from their activities on the planet with us, but their activities have continued covertly, both on Earth, the Moon, and Mars. And from the knowledge I have and the limited amount of information I've been able to get, that the primary focus, the primary intelligence behind all of this are the Anunnaki, the same group that genetically engineered us so many thousands of years ago.
Okay, but you've got Enki and Enlil, right? And these are warring brothers, and one is working for the positive side of humanity.
Well,
and
you
the
had
other...
this dysfunctional family. They even went to war with each other. And man was in the middle, as he always has been. We were a product of their engineering. They engineered us as a slave species. They engineered us to work for them.
So they're still at war.
They still have a difference of opinion about us. Now, whether Enlil and Enki, he goes by 2 names,
Okay.
whether they still are alive or not,
Right.
with the genetic geniuses that they have been, that they are, they can genetically manipulate, they ingeniously genetically manipulated their own chromosomes, DNA, till they literally have become practically immortal. Now, I wouldn't be a bit surprised that Enki and Enlil may still be alive. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're running around with a cane like I do, and grunting and groaning. They got the great grandkids doing the running, and I don't know that, and I'm sure that no one else does. But apparently, the factions are still divided, and the one side wants to use us, as they always did, and the other side wants to give us the opportunity to be our own species, to chart our own future, and to determine our own lives.
So when we get back to the national security state and the state of the U.S. right here and now, I mean, you're an ex-military. I hardly want to call you ex because I think you're in some ways probably still consulted here and there. We're about to go to war with Iran. What's your perspective on this? We're not?
No, we're not.
Okay.
And that's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever it's worth,
Sure.
I have a half penny in my pocket that I don't believe that we're going to have a nuclear war because I don't think the custodians will allow it.
Right.
The planet is too valuable It's too rich a reservoir of life. Not only the humans here on this planet, but all the other creatures. This planet is an absolute cornucopia of beautiful, beautiful forms of life. And not only that, but the what is it, the fauna and the what's the other term?
Flora.
The flora.
Uh-huh.
The flora is infinite almost.
Yeah.
No, the planet's too valuable.
Okay.
They've got a lot invested in planet Earth, and they're not about to let it go to a nuclear war because they have the power to see that it does not happen. And I want to tell you something else. You've heard this old rumor about the Prime Directive?
Mm-hmm.
Bullshit. It doesn't exist.
Right. Okay.
They have been interfering here, breaking the so-called Prime Directive over the centuries, so thousands of times. They have been interfering, according to our historical records, back to ancient Greece. They probably had a hand in that damn dust-up at Troy. Mm-hmm. You know, they took sides. There were even rumors in Homer's reports that the gods themselves came down and took sides and played in the game. To them, it's a game.
Right. Well, the Bhagavad Gita, if you're
there
familiar
you are.
with it,
It's
I mean,
filled
we
with
go
it.
in.
The Vedas are filled with it, you see.
Absolutely.
Richard Thompson is a genius. He's written a book about it.
Oh.
Alien Identities, it's called.
Okay, I'll
Get
take
it,
a look.
read it if you get a
Yes,
chance.
I'd love
Richard
to.
Thompson. But the history's pretty clear. They've intervened over the centuries, again and again and again, wherever it seemed appropriate to their benefit on their behalf. And they've gotten in our wars. They've messed around in that whole mess.
Okay, but what about Planet X?
Oh, it's a reality.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So what are they going to do about that?
Well, apparently they are concerned about, you know the story. According to Sitchin and according to the Sumerians, it's a reality. Mm-hmm. Well, our astronomers apparently have concluded that it is indeed a reality. For almost a century, astronomers have been concerned and interested about what they called an intruder that seems to come and go from time to time, and they can measure it by the perturbations and the effects on other planets. They've known its existence for a long time, but they've never gone public about it. Well, in the early 80s, the JPL, anyhow, they sent out a couple of Pioneers satellites back in 82 just to try to determine if there was some truth to it. Mm-hmm. And the Pioneers apparently came back with data which said not only yes, but hell yes. And the Pioneers concluded, the Pioneer satellite data concluded. So, wow, astronomers were troubled by that. Whew. Could this thing be real? And well, what did they do? They sent out what they called an infrared astronomical satellite. I think they called it IRAS anyhow, and this was done in '83. They sent the IRAS out, taking infrared pictures all around the ecliptic, above and below. And apparently IRAS got 2 giant positive responses that yes, the 12th planet, the 10th planet, however you want to call it, yes, it's real. And that's when the lid slams down.
So it's out there, it's on its way back in, right?
According to the Sumerians and Sitchin, apparently it is. And if you're a student of history, as one of my majors, its last pass was 1600 BC. The Sumerians and Sitchin and all of those say it has an orbit of 3,600 years. Mm-hmm. So as like many of us, I counted my fingers and toes and figure, 1600 BC, it has an orbit of 3,600 years. Wow! It's due. Well, apparently it is.
So
Now,
why are they keeping this a secret?
Because
you're an expert on secrets.
Listen, every time Nibiru would make a pass, it was not always devastating. It would depend on whether the planet Earth and Nibiru were on the same side of the sun at the same time. And if we were on the same side of the sun at the same time, all hell would break loose on planet Earth. Well, apparently, the last pass triggered the explosion of Santorini, Terra, the volcano in the Mediterranean, in the Aegean Sea, blew its top, brought to a close the great, great Minoan civilization. This is a valuable planet, and they love it. They own it. We've never owned it. We just live on it. They farm us, so to speak. God. Charles Fort was right, to some degree. We are property. And we're going to remain property until we reach a point where we can literally stand up and say, all right, we're going to do this now ourselves, and prove it to the universe. We're dealing with a universe filled with life, and most of it is so far beyond our own. There are creatures and life forms out there that are literally godlike. A lot of the remote viewers who've encountered them, and I've seen a few of them myself, look upon them as transcendentals. They manifest as living energy life forms, forms of light. You know, I have nothing but hope because I'm an immortal being. I'm an infinite life form. If you could see me the way I really am, Bill, it wouldn't be in this pathetic body with the...
It's only our bodies we're describing, not
Oh,
us.
that's right. You know, this is just a shell. I've had it for 79 years. I've used it badly, and I've abused it over the years, and I'm beginning to pay the lessons, or the prices for that. But if you could see me as I can see you, and we are shimmering beings of light.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Well, okay, I have a question for you because he's got a book out called End of Days.
Yes.
And in that book, he actually talks about Nibiru and the return, but he doesn't say that it's actually going to happen now.
He says he thinks it's about 2060. That was his estimate.
Okay, and so where does this information that you have and 2012, how do we put this all together? Because I'm going to say something about what you're telling us, because it's clear that you're something of an intelligence analyst yourself. You certainly have an incredible background. You can cross-correlate and so on. But you also have some insider contacts, and you also have contact with Anunnaki, as you said, all right? So where are you getting your information, and are they saying anything specific about what's happening 2012? Because I'm not so sure about Zachariah's question.
That's 2060, but apparently it could be before that. The Department of Defense is quite concerned about it, that there are entire sections of the Defense Department that are working on that subject particularly. The big question is, are we in it going to be on the same side of the sun at the same time? And some of our remote viewers have concluded that yes, it's going to happen this time. That we and it will be on the same side of the sun at the same time. And if the remote viewer, and they're getting their information from ETs, and much of my information from the same source. And yes, we're in for some bad times.
And we're talking about while we're still here on the planet, because I don't know that we'd be alive during 2060.
Well, I don't know whether I'll still be here or not. You know, I'll be 80 in March, and you know, I've got a ticket out of here.
Right.
I've got it stamped. I've got it paid.
But
I'm 9 years beyond my warranty as it is.
No, but I think you're going to live quite a while. So what? Okay, so we've got this interesting thing going on, and we're we have a huge crackdown on anything to do with Planet X. It's
Yes.
been made the laughing stock. It's an amazing thing.
Oh, the ridicule is.
I mean, I think it supersedes even the ET ridicule.
Oh, it does. It
You know,
does.
I think it's been so strong, and it actually has come, I would say, from the Vatican.
Mm-hmm.
So what are they so afraid of, number one? And number two, have you heard the theory that basically what has to happen is a protective shield is going to be put around the Earth such that this time it's actually not going to have the impact that it has in the past?
I've heard that rumor in passing. And the technology exists to do that. Mm-hmm. What I have a suspicion is that much of what will transpire will be allowed to transpire. The Earth is not going to be destroyed, and the human race is not going to come to an end. But it is going to be a difficult period of time when it begins, and let me tell you, it has already begun. The reaction from the sun is a clear response to the presence of this other body. Now, this other body has already been photographed by telescopes in southern Chile and in New Zealand. I had asked Marcia to dig into her files. I had an article from a good friend who publishes a magazine in Rome. And Adriano, I don't know whether you know about Adriano Forgione, brilliant young man.
Yes.
Anyhow, he has connections with the Vatican. He has good friends who are Jesuit priests and astronomers. And the Vatican is concerned about it. Anyhow, Adriano sent me an article including 2 photographs that have been taken of Nibiru already, taken by primarily, I think, this observatory in Chile. But they've taken pictures at an observatory in New Zealand as well. So it's close enough now that optical telescopes have pictures of it. And they're studying it carefully to try to determine, what is it they call it, the celestial mechanics of how everything moves. Well, if our remote viewers are correct, and the ETs have given us some rundown on it, it's going to be a difficult passing. Because we and it are going to be on the same side of the sun at the same time, and that means all hell's going to break loose. Now, they have the technology. We're talking about not only Anunnaki. There are intelligences out there that began 1 billion years ago, and they have technology that puts them in a category of what Kaku would call a Type 3 civilization. Mm-hmm. So that a Type 3 civilization has the technology to mitigate the passing of Nibiru. Now, whether they do that, as you say, put a protective shield around it, Nibiru has done that for itself. They have a protective shield around their planet, which is why in the photographs it comes out as kind of reddish gold. And apparently that's why they came here for the gold in the first place, because they were losing their atmosphere, and they needed to seed gold particles in their atmosphere to keep the atmosphere from, they go on a long trip out there.
Okay, but the Anunnaki are here, you're saying, and yet the Anunnaki are supposedly on Nibiru as well, or what are you thinking, or what's your sources telling you about this?
The civilization, the Anunnaki civilization, is on the planet. But the Anunnaki are on this planet as well, all over the damn place, under the sea, at facilities that we know about, inside Mount Hayes in Alaska, inside Mount Perdido in the Pyrenees. There's one right in the middle of Australia, which is near Alice Springs. And what's the facility out there?
Pine Gap.
Pine Gap, yes. Thank you, my friend. Pine Gap.
To
And that happens to be the R&R facility, according to the remote viewers.
What's R&R? I'm sorry.
Rest and relaxation. It's what we used to call it in the military when we.
The R&R facility for who? What, the
For
Anunnaki?
the ET
Really?
and the Anunnakis, yes.
Pine Gap.
And they're dealing with human beings. They need rest and relaxation. A lot of my work has been a result of analyzing and sifting and evaluating the work of others. That's what an intelligence analyst does. Takes data from a variety of sources. But I have some information that I have been provided from sources within the U.S. government that tell me that, yes, they are deeply concerned about it, and they're worried sick about it, and they don't know what to do about it, because we don't have the power to do a damn thing about it.
Is the estimated date, as best you are given to understand by your sources, in the next few years, rather than Sitchin's estimate of 2060?
Well, let me tell you something about. You're talking about 2012?
I'm talking, well, there are some serious Planet X researchers who say that we'll see the thing next year, and the thing's going to start.
I think you may see it next year, but I don't think you're going to have the hell breaking loose until maybe about 2020. You're going to have a build-up of factors. It's not going to happen all of a sudden, just like that. You're not going to go out the front door and all hell's breaking loose. You're going to see a series of events taking place involving our geologic structures. You're going to have increased volcanic activity. You're going to have increased sunspot activity. We're at a low right now, but you're going to see tremendous sunspot activity. You're going to see tremendous geologic activity. The ring of fire will probably erupt. Now, these are all going to be clues that all hell is coming, you know. You're going to have storms. The cyclones have been getting worse, and the hurricanes have been getting worse. You're going to having hurricanes showing up in places that they really haven't troubled us for a long, long time. So you're going to have a build-up, not slowly, but a consistent build-up of geological and weather and sunspot activities, and you're probably going to, the estimate that I've heard from people who have studied it is about 2020.
Is that what the underground bases is all about?
Well, I have always had the conviction, and I've put this together over the years, that the so-called elite, the creme de la creme, when they're self-designated, you know, they have been preparing for chaos for years. It initially was initiated by the thermonuclear threat with the Soviets. Underground, fallout shelters where we could go. We have our own air conditioning. We can have our own food supplies and our own water supplies. That was a program that began that I worked very closely with when I was with FEMA over the years. I've been in underground facilities you wouldn't believe. And there are facilities everywhere that are not known. I mean, there's a big facility right under Fort Huachuca here in Arizona. I mean, a massive one. Never come out. It'll build up slowly, and it's already subtly begun. And they don't want to talk about it. No one wants to share it. I mean, look, for God's sake, what the lid they've kept on the reality of ET activity on the moon and Mars. You know, when Ike met that crowd at Muroc, which is now Edwards,
right,
in '54, he met the Anunnaki. Poor Ike, not long after that, had a heart attack. It was more than he was able to deal with. The shock of that reality took a toll on him. And that's one of the reasons why the Brookings report reached the conclusion it did. You can't tell those poor folks out there all this. They couldn't handle it. Well, BS, they can handle it. Damn, human beings can handle anything. I mean,
I have to agree with you.
We've gone through hell over the centuries. If we could handle Attila the Hun and Adolf Hitler, we can handle anything. We've been designed to handle anything. We haven't been designed to live very long. But then again, there's another story there.
Right.
Where did you think that this tremendous outpouring of knowledge on the double helix, our RNA, our DNA, and all of that has been coming forth? Is there some connection with the fact that maybe we now have a relationship with the guys who originally designed us in the first place?
Sure.
Of course we have. We're now in the process of redesigning and engineering our own DNA. And we're being told how, we're being shown how. And thank God they're sharing it with us now, because the first time poor old Adama and Ewa wanted the knowledge, they threw him out of the garden, as it were, you know. And that's another thing I want to talk about briefly in passing, is that there's no such thing as original sin. And that's a crock of manure that's been forced down your throats for thousands of years. There's no such thing as original sin. The human race never fell. It was pushed. And this species that you and I are a part of, this beautiful, wonderful, hopefully incredible race of humans, does have a future. And it is in the stars. And we are going out there to reclaim our rightful place, where we should have been in the first place.
Let's talk about the astronauts for a minute, because what's going on with Clark McClelland, and why is he having such a problem coming forward?
I didn't know Clark was having a problem.
He has a book that he's trying to write. He's penniless. He's had a terrible time. They don't want him to talk.
No, they probably don't.
Okay. And have you talked to the astronauts? What about Edgar Mitchell? Have you talked to Edgar Mitchell?
I talked before he died with Gordon Cooper. I was on the phone a few times with Cooper. He even sent me a photograph of himself. I admired him because he was one of the mavericks who had the courage to come out and say what he had seen. I've known Ed Mitchell for some years. Every time I get a chance to see him, I chat with him, and I consider him a delightful man. He's very warm and terribly bright.
Are they mind controlled?
To some degree.
Have their minds been wiped?
Cooper never was.
Okay.
They never got to Gordon. And I don't think they got to Neil Armstrong either. But all of the rest of them, to some level, have been kind of, well, what's the word I'm looking for here? They have been conditioned not to speak. And in some cases, they may have been hypnotically affected to not remember. Dark mission, Hoagland says, and the evidence is pretty clear, that they hypnotically debriefed, is what they call it. But supposedly they were hypnotized to help them enhance their memory and to recall. And apparently some of them had been hypnotically advised not to remember certain things. As much as I admire Ed Mitchell and respect him, tremendous, wonderful guy, he has admitted publicly in front of other people that his time on the moon, walking on the moon, was kind of vague. He can't recall everything. And of course, that's sad. And then you have a case of Aldrin. Now, Aldrin has had experiences where he has been with friends, and the subject would come up. and Buzz would start to cry. Or he would get nauseated. One time, and Hoagland touches upon this, I think, in chapter 10 in the book, where Aldrin was in conversation with a few people and with his wife, having a few drinks, and just kind of relaxed. And somebody asked him a blunt, straight to the point question, and he had to run out and throw up. He got sick. Now this to me is a result, and I've studied it enough over the years to know that sounds to me like hypnotic suggestion. Mm-hmm. He has been hypnotically conditioned not to remember or to not even discuss it. And if he gets nauseated, and in the one instance with a bunch of old friends, old flyboy types, he ended up starting to cry. Now this breaks my heart because Aldrin is a good man. He was one of our better men to be selected for that program. Mm-hmm. You know the story, and this is common knowledge. They got back from Apollo 11. They put Aldrin in a sanitarium for about 6 weeks. He was suffering from alcoholism. Do you believe that? Do you believe one of our best and bravest, one of the finest, who in the Apollo program suffered from alcoholism? Nonsense. That apparently it was the programming to be reinforced. Now, why would a grown man with his background break down and cry like a baby, or end up getting nauseous and barf on the subject? That's hypnotic, post-hypnotic stress.
So what is it on the moon that is, that is so important that they want to completely whitewash it out?
Oh my God, these astronomical societies, the professional astronomers in this country have been guilty of criminal activity. You may quote me. They've been guilty of criminal activity for years to not discuss the reality of what they knew on the moon. There are major facilities and major activities going on the moon all the time. Not only that, the moon has water. Now, whether it's a natural process from the satellite, or whether it's water that's been stored there for use, there are vaporous signs of a form of an atmosphere in the bottom of some of the craters. Now, astronomers have seen these pictures, but that dishonest bunch of nitwits won't discuss it. They're scared because you know why? 90% of their income comes from government grants. And when you've got a government grant, and that's your prime source of income, you're going to say whatever the government says you should say, or don't say whatever the government doesn't want said. Well, anyhow, there's some atmosphere on the moon, at least in the base of several of the larger craters. There is water on the moon, but there is major activity going on. I mean, we're talking about engineering activity. There are giant ships that come and go out of the craters. Mm-hmm. There are lights all the time. They have noticed bridges appearing and then disappearing. I mean, they're active as hell on the moon. But the same activity is going on Mars. Sure. You've seen my photograph, I guess. It's not only my photograph. But there is a city the size of Chicago underground on Mars that's generating so much heat it shows up in infrared photographs.
Are you in touch with John Lear?
I've met John. I've been in his house a time or two. I visited him. I have a tremendous respect for him. The reason I like John is he's been nailed, as I have, as a damn fool maverick,
I mean, this is his pet, project.
The establishment has tried to ridicule John Lear, and you can't ridicule John Lear because he's got sources similar to some of my own that are beyond question. He's getting people inside, feeding him information almost on a regular basis. I get mine in bits and pieces when I go to conferences and when I meet people, But John gets it direct.
So, okay, but you know him, and here I'm just basically, you're saying this thing is engineered. So what happened in Georgia? What do you know about it?
Oh, it was all engineered.
Okay, so the Russians, were tipped off.
The president of Georgia did what he did just to lure the Russians in.
Right.
And he went in. The Russians could not have ignored him, for God's sake. He invaded one of their little,
So what's the purpose behind it, though? We know what happened, but why?
I think, what could the purpose be other than to detract people's attention from this over here to this over here?
Okay, and
while
this
our economy was falling around your knees, we're all paying attention to the Russians invading poor little Georgia.
Okay.
Well, the Russians didn't invade poor little Georgia. They went out and whacked the president of Georgia's little pee-pee, as it were, stopped that, and they pulled back,
Right.
That was, how the magician works? He gets you in front of he's
Very
got,
good.
and
Yes.
he's doing this with this hand while he's picking your pocket with this one.
That's right.
And that's what the government is doing. And when I say government, it's not the government you think you got.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the, God, that's all a facade in itself.
Mm-hmm.
The government we've got is probably being totally run by the Anunnaki. Because there is a power beyond power that's pulling the strings.
Right.
They call them the Illuminati. But there are guys above the Illuminati that are really in power.
Okay, but we're told the Vatican is behind a lot of it, and that, in other words, the Vatican is behind what's going on in the U.S., that there's a plan, and you've got the Anunnaki. This is not a positive plan, okay, to take down the
Well,
U.S.
they think it is.
Do you think it is?
Their ultimate idea is, yes, a positive idea.
Okay, what is it?
A one-world government.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
Of course that's what they want.
Right.
And they're going to have it eventually.
Absolutely. Now, you can have a positive one.
But the growing pains,
right?
the growing pains that we go through before we get there, it's going to be pretty horrendous. Not only are we going to have to put up with this crap with Nibiru, which is a real thing, but this growing process that we're going through to end up eventually with a one-world government is going to be painful as hell. And there's going to be a lot of blood on the streets before it's over with. Mm-hmm. Sadly enough, that's in my opinion a fact. And that's being manipulated from a very high level.
Okay, but we have white hats in the U.S. government that are actually trying to prevent this, are they not?
We have some good men and good women who are well aware of what's taking place and what's transpiring, and they're trying to modify, ameliorate, is that the right word? To make this growth pain as painless as possible. They're trying to not have as much blood as it might take. Growth from adolescence as a species and as a society is somewhat like the painful growth of an adolescent kid, 13 years old, who's trying to grow up. Do you remember when you went through that? It was
Sure.
not fun time.
Absolutely. So, okay, but let's get down to the nuts and bolts. The stock market is crashing.
Mm-hmm.
You need to invest in gold and silver
The
if you want to
stock
stay
market
alive.
was rotten to its core.
Absolutely. But are you telling people to leave, to go to South America?
No,
What's your advice?
I'm telling people that you're in for some difficult times. And I say this in my presentations. I jokingly look at them and say, you're all doomed. There's not a one of you that's going to be around 100 years from now. You're doomed. So to hell with it. Enjoy the ride. No, I tell people who are interested in listening, for whatever it is I have to say, that you're in for some difficult times. It's going to happen. There is no way to avoid it. We cannot go on as we were, because some of our systems were rotten to the core, and our banking system, the insurance programs, all of that, stock market, Wall Street, those guys were absolutely rotten.
The housing industry?
The housing industry. That was bound to fail. You talk about a bubble, it was bound to fail. It had to fail. Well, I'm glad it failed. Hope to hell that they learned something from it. Now.
Okay, but are we talking about martial law in the United States? I mean, what are we talking here?
You're talking about a time when you may have martial law. It's only one step away. You know that the authority has been given to the president to declare it.
Right.
Congress gave that authority to the president years ago. I've even lost track of how long it's been. But anyhow, all the president has to do, whoever he may be, and that doesn't matter much anymore either, because one nitwit is very much like the other. You have a national emergency, and it's declared.
Right.
Boom. Martial law. You declare a national emergency, which has not been declared yet.
Right.
But we're right on the edge of it.
Right.
And you're going to have martial law. I know this is all happening. It's going to take place. It's inevitable. It's been orchestrated. The Illuminati do exist. They are in power. They've been in power for years. They've been demonstrating that power ever since 1913, when they created the hell is it, this banking system? The
Federal Reserve.
Federal Reserve, yeah, which is a private corporation. We lost most of it in 47. I don't know whether you were aware of that, but that was a big year. National security became everything. It became the member of the triad. 47, we declared, we made the National Security Agency. We formed a pact with the Brits, the Australians, the Canadians, and New Zealanders. The UKUSA Pact, which most people don't even know exists. The UKUSA crowd, all of us, Britain, US, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, are all like this. Whoever's in the White House and who's ever at Buckingham Palace, it don't matter.
All right.
The power behind the scenes has been running this damn thing since 1947. And Ike saw it, scared the hell out of him. He met the Anunnaki, that scared the hell out of him. So they're pulling our strings now like they always have.
Okay. So what's your solution? What would you tell people? I mean, in facing the future, in trying to reinvent the future, certainly Marsha's working with people to become enlightened, to
She's doing
apply.
a tremendous amount of work to help people make this transition. Carrie, we're not just going through a transition, we're going through a transcendent transformation, literally. A transcendent transformation. We're going to come out of this thing when it's all over with, totally different species. We're not going to be the same people we were in the past. And that's good. And it's going to hurt, and it's going to be painful. And I tell people, and I've said this repeatedly, don't get too uptight about it. You've been through hell before, you're going to through a bit of it again. But once it's over, once you've made that transition, we're going to have, hopefully, a new world, a new future, a new beginning. And I think that's the end of the great year that we're going through. We're going through the end of a 26,000-year cycle. And I tell you, 2012 don't matter. First of all, Christ was born 7 years before. And this is a fact. And if you don't believe me, get Sir Lawrence Gardner, who's probably one of the best historians we've got working today. Lawrence Gardner's got the facts. Jesus was born 7 BC on the 1st of March. Now, if you want to count from his birth, like we supposedly have been doing, add 7 years to 2008. You end up with 2015. That's pretty close to what 20...
Oh, so you're saying we're actually in the year 2015 now?
No, we're in the year 2015 right now.
Right. So
Yes.
that means that Nibiru, when you say it's coming in 2020, is actually due in about 5 years.
Probably.
So we're looking at 2013 by our calendar.
Well, no later than 2017. I'll throw 2017 out,
Okay.
and you can take that to the bank. 2017. Now,
Okay.
that'll give or take a year or two, because the celestial mechanics, they haven't really worked it all out yet. We've got computers you wouldn't believe, but they're still trying to feed in some of the data.